Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapad Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today we're going to be continuing our discussion of the 11th chapter. I'll just touch on a few notes that we mentioned last week because I think they're very important as we go through the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter. Devotees are always very excited to hear from the 11th chapter. It's always what people look forward to. I know whenever I whenever one of my friends starts reading the Gita or something, all of my other friends who are devotees, they will tell them, oh, just you wait until you get to the 11th chapter. That's the very exciting chapter, right? Because we hear about heavy philosophy, you know, all of these things. But this is the point, again, where we see it demonstrated, right? And we see it with a lot of artistry. And we will touch upon all of your artistry a little bit later. And hopefully we will have a bit more of your artistic talents later on into the class. But this section really does have very vivid descriptions, right? And these vivid descriptions are vivid for a reason. Again, as I said, up until this point, we have really been discussing philosophy. Probably the most poetic sections we've had is I am the taste of water, the strength of the strong, and then we have among so-and-so's I am so-and-so, right? Among X's I am Y. These are probably the most poetic we've had, and none of that comes even close to the poetry we're seeing in this section in terms of visual imagery. Of course, the Bhagavad-gītā is all this one wonderful song, and it's all very poetic, but I mean poetic in terms of imagery, right? So this section becomes very popular, and people get very invested and happy to learn about it. However, as we discussed, if we go on here, as we discussed, Srila Prabhupada makes this very clear that devotees aren't too fussed about the universal form. We're very happy to learn about it, and to learn about it is essential, right? Otherwise, Krishna wouldn't speak it. I'm not trying to say that Krishna has spoken some unnecessary thing and devotees skip the 11th chapter in studying the Bhagavad-gītā. Instead, what I'm saying is that this is a temporary form that's really meant to ground us into realizing just how amazing the Shamsundar form is. When we hear this form, it should make us increase our appreciation for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So, in which way is this so? This almost comes back to our discussion of the Chatur Shloki, right? We might remember we were discussing Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, right? A very Siddhantic text, right? And you might remember in our discussion, I brought up the question, this is the most confidential knowledge. This is the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavad-gītā. This is the apex of what we have studied. If this is the highest knowledge, why are we speaking about Krishna being the source of all reality? Does anyone, and I'm happy to live in an awkward silence, so someone will have to try and give it a stab. Does anyone remember why we explained why having Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo works well in terms of it being in the most confidential knowledge, even though it is not very rasic, and we know that rasic knowledge is the most confidential knowledge. Why? You might remember we had a little discussion on it. We discussed a few pastimes regarding jagganath and so on and so forth. As I said, I'm happy to live in the awkward silence. Somebody's going to have to give it a jab. If we spend the next 2 hours of me waiting, I'll wait. The question again is, if the most confidential knowledge, if the highest knowledge of Krishna consciousness is very rasic, Krishna dancing with his devotees, you know, in Madhurya Rasa, in Sakhya Rasa, all of these very high things. Why are we learning in Bhagavad-gītā at the height of the most confidential knowledge? Why were we learning that Krishna is the source of all reality? Krishna is God, all of these sort of things. Why didn't Krishna explode in that moment and say, I am dancing with the gopis and this is the most confidential knowledge?
Did he want to prove that he was God to Arjuna in sort of a more traditional sense?
He definitely wanted to do that. And that's definitely an aspect. Why, in the most confidential knowledge, was he still proving that he is God, right? That would be the further question I would ask. Why is he trying to demonstrate that? Because normally we say that's ABCs, right? People will say Krishna is God, you are spirit soul, you are not Krishna. These are the ABCs of the philosophy. And the XYZs are, again, Rasa Leela, you know, Rasa Leela Katha, glories of Radha Kund, right? And these are the XYZs. So why is Krishna discussing this? I'll take one more stab in the dark. Varun Prabhu is unmuted.
Maybe, Prabhu, because that is the root, root of understanding. To get to the Rasik and, you know, that the Krishna is all loving, you know, and dancing in Vrindavan, you have to pass through this one. Like, you have to understand that he is everywhere, only like kind of to a point where you forget that he's everywhere. That in, like, you see him dancing and all that, you forget that he's God, but you have to pass through that stage. I think that is the root of it.
Yep.
Without that foundation, you can't, everything else falls apart. Like, you can't, Arjun cannot be, he can't just, he only have 15, 20 minutes or half an hour, whatever the time, like the Krishna is like telling him in the middle of the war, and he needs to get to a conclusive, like he has already, Krishna has, you know, like he's already concluded, he's already convinced, but maybe I think that is the foundation of everything. The whole philosophy sits on this one.
Yeah. You started well. At the end, I would have to disagree with the point, but if up until the very end, you were smack dab on the money. Okay.
Yeah, can I add what Taran Prabhu?
Yes, please add to it.
This is we had to understand the magnanimity of the Krishna, so that we can understand his activities correctly. Otherwise, we'll be under impression that whatever his actions are, we won't be able to understand it correctly, because most of the people, like they're trying to jump onto these Rasa Leela pastimes without prematurely, so that they'll get bewildered by his actions. Without we understand the Krishna's magnanimity and his actual position, we cannot jump onto those things. I believe so. That's what my feeling is, probably.
Yeah, that is again, yeah.
So I have
what I was after. Sorry?
I have one more point in mind.
Okay, Jai.
The most difficult thing to kind of overcome is the false ego. And false ego, if this thing sinks in you, like you have that realization, like to a deeper realization, in the sense that sticking one, that he's everywhere, and you are, then the false ego has no space left. And hence you can cross and go even forward, probably.
Yeah. Could you repeat the last part? I heard it. I just want to fully process the point you wanted to make. Just the last sentence.
Yes, Prabhu. That it is the most confidential means to get to the highest stage. in a way that, and to get to that stage, you have to cross over your false ego. And the only way I see is you can do it if you, this aham sarvasva prabhavo, once this thing sinks in you, then there is no space left for false ego.
Mhm.
It's the most confidential.
So I think, both Srinivas Prabhu and Tarun Prabhu are making similar points. They're putting emphasis on different areas, but it's the same point. And it's a very valid and important point. And that was the point that I was trying to get to, right? We have to understand the tattva of Krishna before we can understand the lila of Krishna, because otherwise we will not understand who Krishna is, right? I always remember when I was in Vrindavan last time, I landed obviously in Delhi airport, right? The international airport there. And when I arrived there, obviously with my neck beads and my Visakha and all, I was very identifiably, going there in order to see the holy dham, right? And when I was there, the guy in customs, he was very nice. He treated me very well, and he was talking to me, you're small talking with me while, all the boring stuff going through all the paperwork. And then he said, oh, so, are you going, I can't remember. He said, are you leaving your girlfriend back home, or are you going to see your girlfriend in Vrindavan? He said something like that, right? He was joking with me. And I said, oh, no. I'm not, I'm not too interested in that, right? And he told me, and then with a little smile, he said, oh, but Krishna has so many girlfriends, so why can't you? And there we see it, right? There is that mentality on display. Until and unless you understand aham sarvasya prabhavo, Krishna dancing in the Rasa Leela, Krishna's reciprocal interactions, even forget about his romantic, amorous pastimes, even the fact that Krishna wrestles with his friends and sometimes his friends win, right? Until and unless we are rooted in the fact that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, we will not understand these pastimes and we will inappropriately access them, right? But when we understand this, then we can truly enter into them. And that's why we will often emphasize these things. And that's why it's there in the Chatur Shloki. Krishna actually implicitly, he's speaking very rasically in the Chatur Shloki. As you might remember, I gave a bit more of a rasic class than I normally do when we were discussing the Chatur Shloki. But but still, this needs to be grounded in tattva, right? The tattva, the Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Sometimes it's said that the leelas of Krishna are painted on the canvas of tattva. Leela is painted on the canvas of tattva, right? Because when we understand the tattva, there the leela can come alive. Not that we're always cognizant of the tattva, in the same way that when you see an artwork, you don't think, wow, this is a really nice quality canvas, right? But the canvas still needs to be there, because otherwise it's just paint being thrown in the air, right? The appreciation, the foundation is not there. So the beauty of the pastimes of Krishna require that canvas to be there. I see Tarun Prabhu has unmuted himself.
Sorry, Prabhu, I forgot to mute myself.
Oh, okay. Rohan Prabhu is saying, is this related to Jagannath and Mahaprabhu? Would you like to expand on that?
Oh no, it was just the question that you asked before. I thought it's like, because this is really showing Krishna as like the Aishwarya element of Krishna, being the Supreme Lord. And it's very different from the very intimate like mood in Vrindavan. So I just thought that because Krishna has already experienced that mood in Vrindavan, that's why understanding this, it's like more of that, understanding Krishna in separation, because it's very different from the Krishna that we know.
So this is a good point. I'd want to adjust one thing that you said, but overall, this is the second point that I wanted to get to. So the first one is that we need to understand the tattva in order to understand the leela. The second point I wanted to get to is that this is an Aishwarya form, and when we see the Aishwarya form, our hearts should increase in our love for that Madhurya form of the sweet two-armed Krishna. When we see this form is actually really, really important for us to study, because the more we see it, we should think, how grateful are we that we see that three-bended Krishna with his flute, right? So this is probably one of the more Aishwarya forms in a sense. In one sense, it's not, because it's a temporary form. It's not as opulent as Narayan is, right? But this form in particular, this form in particular should make us think, and this is actually what Prabhupada says. That's why I have this purport up here that we read out last week. This form should make us think, oh, how beautiful then is Krishna, right? All of this is very majestic and opulent and impressive, but I just want to see that little blue cowherd boy, right, play his flute. In terms of him tasting Aishwarya, in Vrindavan, Krishna still tastes full Aishwarya. There's just so much madhurya that you can't even notice Aishwarya anymore. There is more Aishwarya and opulence in Goloka Vrindavan than there is in the rest of Vaikuntha. But that's just how intense the madhurya is in Goloka, that you can't even notice it, even though it's so intense. Okay, so I've made those 2 points. I know I made them last week, but I just wanted to reiterate them because I think they're very important principles to understand. First, that we don't want to become sahajiyas, right? And think how sweet Krishna is and forget that he actually is the source of all reality, the ground of all existence. And on the other hand, we shouldn't get too invested in him being the ground of all existence and forget that he's primarily a sweet little boy, right? Of course, not a sweet little boy in the mundane sense. Okay, right? We need that balance of both when going through the Gita. And that's why the Gita will discuss both these things in order to give a balanced delivery of the philosophy. Okay, so let's get into it then. So not all of you sent your drawings in, so that's going to be a little bit of, because I've used for my slides your drawings, so we'll get to see them. For the activity today, we'll do the final texts. I think we might have too many people for how many texts are left, so I'm just going to reallocate the texts that weren't done, right? That weren't completed, and because we'll do the activity a little earlier, hopefully today, you should all get those in to the WhatsApp group, and then we'll have our complete collage of the universal form. Okay, so let us begin with text 12. As we've already discussed, I'm not sure where we got up to in terms of reciting shlokas, but I'm going to begin with text 12. So let's have Rohan Prabhu maybe say the English. Divi Surya Sahasrasya Bhaved Yoga Paduttita Yadi Bhaha Sadrishi Sasyad Bhasastasya Mahatmanaha.
If hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once into the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in their universal form.
Jai, right? So here we're hearing about, again, this is very, very visual. This is very visual. What's very interesting though is that Baladev Vidyabhushan, right? What does he say? He says it might resemble, right? It might resemble, but you can still see my PowerPoint, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay. Because I started typing up my notes, so I've put my notes on the screen instead of having to look into so I was worried you were all seeing my notes because they're not as aesthetic as the PowerPoint. What does he say? He says they might be resembling the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universal form. They might be. What is this? This in Sanskrit is called utpreksha, right? Which is a comparison, which actually is implied to be deficient. What is being said here? Krishna is not saying it, but what is being said here? What is being said is that if you can imagine something as amazing and as hyperbolic as thousands of suns, right, flourishing in the sky, you can imagine, right? I mean, we can't even look. If you look into the sky at one sun, right, your eyesight's going to get damaged. If you can imagine thousands of suns, that itself is not sufficient to explain the radiance of the universal form. The point here isn't that you should imagine 1,000 suns and think, oh, wow, that's what the universal form is like. The point that's being made here is that if you imagine 1,000 suns, that still would not be like what the universal form is like in terms of its radiance and splendor. Does that make sense? It only would get near to that amount. It wouldn't be the same amount. I've heard from some sadhus a similar analogy given for the radiance of Krishna. The glow of Krishna's skin is described. If you could imagine, is it sapphires? Sapphires are blue, aren't they? Sapphires are the
Yes,
blue
Prabhu.
gems. Yeah. Okay, I always get mixed up with sapphires and emeralds. So sapphires, if you could imagine a mountain range, if you could imagine the Himalayas or something, right? Mount Everest, all of these other mountains, right? This whole mountain range. If you could imagine it, but all of the mountains were composed of sapphire, right? And if you were to visualize that in your mind, and if you were to visualize then the sun rising behind that mountain range, the color, right? The color of the sunlight shining through that mountain range is 1/10 of the shadow of Krishna. That is how we can understand the radiance of Krishna, right? So then what to speak of the universal form? It's nowhere near as opulent, it's just 1,000 suns, right? And that's the universal form directly. But again, all of this is to help us understand, right? That that's only a fraction of a fraction. When we use all these analogies, they're only there to give us a rough idea. None of them capture the opulence. If you were to imagine 1,000 suns in the sky, they would look dark compared to the universal form. Okay, so let's move on then to the next text. Text 13. Who drew this one? Whose drawing was this? I can't remember who drew what. Does anyone want to claim this? I think some people might be embarrassed to claim their drawings. I liked all of your drawings, so you don't need to be embarrassed. Okay, well, whichever devotee drew this one, I'm greatly. Oh, actually, I think this was Nandan Prabhu, wasn't it? It was. Okay, I will read out text 13, and maybe Alex Prabhu can say the English. Tatraikastham jagat kritsnam pravibhaktam anekadha apasya deva devasya sharire pandavastada.
At that time, Arjuna could see in the universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many, many thousands.
And Srila Prabhupada, he makes a point, right? Tatra, there, right? Over there, he could see the universal form, right? What is indicated here is that actually, while visualizing the universal form, Arjuna could still see Krishna. The universal form was being seen next to Krishna almost, but Krishna was still there. They were looking over at it. Purna Chandra Goswami, at least he gives this reading. He says that actually the universal form was seen over there, right? Krishna was revealing it to Arjuna, and Arjuna could see it again with his divya chakshush, his transcendental eyes. We already discussed last week. This divya refers less to transcendental in form in the sense of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and more so refers to the demigods, right? But anyways, he saw it with thousands of heads, right? With all these various parts, right? And composed of all of these very different things, right? Okay, I think this one is pretty straightforward. So let's go straight on to text 14. Maybe we can have Srinivas Prabhu. Who drew text 14? Oh, text 14 did not have a drawing, so I've inserted this. Srinivas Prabhu can say the English after I've said the Sanskrit. Tattasa vismaya vishto hrishtaro madhananjayaha pranamya shirasa devam kritanjalir abhashata.
Translation. Then, bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances and with folded hands began to pray to the Supreme Lord. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Right. So, this is a very wonderful one. This is a response, right? What's happened? Overcome with wonder, right? Arjuna is experiencing this. Bewildered and astonished. So now witnessing this, he is experiencing a rasa, right? He is experiencing a rasa, the rasa of astonishment, right? And experiencing this, the technical word is adbhuta, right? When you're astonished when you see something. I know in Bengali, When we say adbhut, it means a weirdo, but I don't know if it has that connotation in Hindi for any of the Hindi speakers. But yeah, it's definitely not what's meant here. What's meant here is that Arjuna, he is feeling astonishment upon seeing this form of the Lord, right? He is seeing all of this, and therefore his hair is standing on end. I wouldn't say in a rustic sense, not in the sense that we hear when Mahaprabhu is feeling his hair standing on end, right? And also what's described is that he did not close his eyes. His eyes were kept open, right? His eyes were kept open. Why? Because he was feeling astonishment. The feeling that Arjuna is feeling here is not fear, right? At least not yet. And this is important. I'm not just rattling this off in order to fill up the time, right? The reason why he's feeling astonishment is to emphasize that when we discuss this, and sometimes we'll say Arjuna became so afraid of seeing the universal form. He's not afraid of seeing the universal form. It's just not as interesting as the two-armed form, right? And this is why our acharyas, they analyze this and they say the rasa being shown here is astonishment. It's not fear, right? He's not afraid. Instead, he's feeling this feeling of paying respects, right? And therefore, when we get to Nectar of Devotion, we'll touch on this text again, because this text is actually very, very involved in analyzing the rasas. He's experiencing a certain rasic experience. And therefore, again, we're hearing the mentions of hair standing on end. It's not the ecstatic love that we hear of with Mahaprabhu, but it still nevertheless is a rasic response. He is responding because of that astonishment. He is feeling his hairs stand on end. So all that to say, Arjuna's mood here is not one of fear. That's just the point I'm trying to emphasize. He is not afraid at this point. He is not bowing down because he's scared. Oh, Lord, protect me. He's bowing down just because of the reverence that he's feeling from seeing this majestic form. He is astonished upon seeing it. Okay. Let's go into text 15. Okay, Nectarian. Maybe we can have Divyansh Prabhu can say the English from this. Arjuna uvacha pashyami devamstava deva dehe sarvam tatha bhuta vishesha sanghan brahmanam misham kamalasanastham rishingscha sarvan uragamscha divyam. You can tell this is a chapter I don't often recite. I stumble more in the 11th chapter than any other chapter. Divyansh Prabhu, if you could say the English.
Yeah, haribol. Arjuna said, "My dear Lord Krishna, I see assembled in your body all the demigods and various other living entities. I see Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, as well as Lord Shiva and all the sages and divine serpents." Thank you.
Jai. So what can we tell from this text? We can tell a few things. One is that when it talks about there are many, many heads, often people think these are all the avatars of the Supreme Lord. And in one sense, probably, you can see that in the art. But more so, it's also all the demigods, all the rishis, all the sages, all these personalities present there. The second point that I really want to make is what have we already discussed, right? We've discussed, especially in chapter 8, where we're discussing the destination, right? Where you go depending on which method you use. What is the destination of the person who goes to the planet of the demigods? What is the destination of one who becomes a demigod? Who can tell me? What is the destination of one who has cultivated the karma yoga path?
Brahmaloka?
Yeah, you go to Brahmaloka, Indraloka. What happens there? Krishna, he discusses this in the 8th chapter. If you it's always good practice. I'm not saying this in a chastising way, just in a general advice way. Good when you're doing Bhakti-śāstrī to reread the chapters as you're going along, just to keep the content fresh. Because we go at such a slow pace through the books, you can really lose track. You know what I mean? We've now nearly spent a year, or maybe we've already we're nearly spent a year going through the Gita. So that's a very So good to keep the memory fresh. But yeah. Vidhi Mataji unmuted, so did Srinivas Prabhu. So let's see who will win.
Again, I don't remember it chapter wise, but basically, when we transcend to the higher planets, we enjoy the fruits of the good karma, but eventually those run out and we have to come back.
Exactly, right? And what is the word for something that that is here today, gone tomorrow? It's temporary. And this is again reiterating the form, the point that I was making regarding the universal form, right? And that Srila Prabhupada was making, right? Which is that this is a temporary form. Yes, it is a form of the Lord, but it is a temporary form, and therefore we're not so like it's impressive. And I'm not saying anything bad about it, but we should realize that the true amazing form is that transcendental form of the Supreme Lord, which Krishna also describes in the Gita, right? As eternal, as non-decaying, etc., etc. Okay, very nectarian drawing there. Okay, text 16. I'm not sure who drew this one either. And I think no one wants to own up to their artistic talents, so I won't ask either. Sorry?
This was me.
This is you, Jai. Well, we all very much appreciate the artwork. And seeing as it's you, maybe you can read out the English then, for the Sanskrit. So text 16. Anneka bahudara vaktranetram pashyami tvam sarvato nantarupam nantam na madhyam na punastavadim pashyami vishveshvara vishvarupa.
O Lord of the universe, O universal form, I see in your body many, many arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes, expanded everywhere without limit. I see in you no end, no middle, and no beginning.
Jai, right? So I think this one pretty much is elaborating on that point, right? The Supreme Lord, he's within him, there's all of these different arms, limbs, heads, and I think in context of the verse before, these arms and legs, yes, they might be those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but more likely, I think this also would refer to all the demigods and rishis that were just mentioned in the text before, right? So what is very interesting is also what is being said here, napunas, right? Indicating that actually at one point he could see a beginning, right? But now he doesn't see a beginning, right? At one point he began to see the beginning, middle, and end, but now he is lost in it, right? He's being so immersed in this cosmic universal form that he cannot witness a beginning, middle, or end. Again, we must think how large something has to be. Have any of you been to Mayapur, to the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium? Have any of you been inside it? I remember I went inside. Oh, Jai, Srinivas Prabhu. Maybe you can tell us then. You'll be able to share the experience much nicer than I could. Did you do the thing where you walked under the central dome and you looked up? Did you experience that?
Well, when I go there, it's not completely finished, Prabhuji. So
yeah,
still under construction, but yeah, we can see that it's a really, the construction and everything is real.
Yeah. If you, when I went, one of my friends, he was doing service to the, he was the secretary for the devotee who was overseeing the building project. So he got us in when none of the tours were going on, right? So it was just us inside the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. We all know about the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, right? They're building it in Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada had the desire for a temple to be built to display Vedic cosmology. It's costed quite a few, several, like I think $100 million or something so far in building and anyway, so the central dome is not that it's a competition, but it's actually larger than St. Peter's Dome in the Vatican. And again, it's not a competition, but if it were, we would be winning. And so so it's very, very large. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is when you go in there, and I don't think they've actually filled it up yet. I went when the dome had just been completed and there was nothing else inside it. It was just a blank dome. And I looked upwards and I literally lost all sense of my existence. Like I could not see the whole thing at once. It was too much for my eyes to comprehend. I could only look at corners at a time, because if I looked at the whole thing, it was just too big for my eyes to actually process in one go. I could only really focus on one aspect and everything else became a blur. That's just how big it was. Like I was just overwhelmed by how large it is. And I'm sure, yeah. Oh, Rohan sent a photo. Is that of the TOVP? Okay, it's something else. Well, I'll click on it
All
later.
right, I found the 1014 photo. Forgot to send it.
Oh, Jai. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, no. So when you go inside, and I'm sure many of us have had that experience, you go through nature and sometimes you just see something so majestic, you can't take it all in at once, right? You can look at the middle, you can maybe see the beginning, you can maybe see the end, but it all is too much. You can't see it all in one go. This is seeing the universal form for Arjuna at this point is like that, except that he can't even see a beginning or a middle or an end. If he looks for a beginning, it's just that same feeling. He can't find the beginning, middle, and the end of the beginning, right? And he can't find the beginning, middle, and the end of the beginning, or the middle of the beginning, right? It's like this. It's so vast. It's so overwhelming, what he's seeing. And now Varun Prabhu said he didn't see that coming, and I really want to see how it looks, but I'm not going to be derailed by Varun Prabhu. Okay. Okay, so let's keep on going then. Text, I think text 17 was one that was also not done from memory. Yeah, so text 17 to 18 were blanks, so we will go through that. Let's have Nitai Prabhu can say the English. Kiritinam gadinam chakrinam cha tejo rashim sarvato diptimantam pashyami tvam durniriksham samantad diptanalarka dyutim aprameyam.
The form is difficult to see because of its glaring effulgence, spreading on all sides like blazing fire or the immeasurable radiance of the sun. Yet I see this glowing form everywhere, adorned with various crowns, clubs, and discs.
Jai. Okay, so the acharyas make very little comment on this text. So if they didn't have much to say, I won't have much to say either. But one thing that is interesting is basically the Baladev Vidyabhushan. He says at this point, Arjuna, he's kind of changing the way that he's describing this form, right? He's sort of shifting his approach, right? He's trying to find a different way. He's saying, I'm seeing all these heads, I'm seeing all of everything. Now he's talking about a different way of demonstrating the same point. This is overwhelming, this is bewildering. I cannot capture and explain this form. And again, we have a wonderful analogy, which I think is very straightforward. Okay, let's go on to text 18, and maybe we can have Sri Mataji say the English for text 18. Tvam aksharam paramam veditavyam tvam masya vishvasya param nidhanam tvam avyaya shashvata dharma gopta sanatanastvam purusho mato me.
You are the supreme primal objective. You are the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You are inexhaustible, and you are the oldest. You are the maintainer of the eternal religion, the personality of Godhead. This is my opinion.
So here we find, again, this is the conclusion that Arjuna is being brought to. Why did Arjuna ask to see this form? We discussed this last week, but I'm just revising it because I'm very well aware that in a 2-hour class, you only take away a few points. I'm the exact same. So I don't take it personally when sometimes you will mind blank when I ask something. Even a 1-hour class, after I finish hearing somebody's Bhagavatam class, I can probably say 2 points that I remember from the class. So I'm just repeating this point because, again, I think it's important for us to, at the very least, get a feeling of the flow of the Bhagavad-gītā, okay? Why is Arjuna asking this? On the one hand, Krishna, he has put this desire into his heart because Krishna wishes to demonstrate this. And what is he wishing to demonstrate? He's wishing to demonstrate, oh yes, aham sarvasya prabhu, right? He wishes, show me how, oh, 1 second. Show me how all of this is true, right? Show me about these unlimited opulences that you are describing. You're talking about them. Now let me see them, right? So in this way, In this way, Arjuna has asked to witness all of these things. And at this point, what is Arjuna saying? Arjuna is saying, yes, right? I am affirming all of this. You are the supreme Brahman, right? You are that transcendence. You are the primal objective, right? You are the ultimate shelter, resting place of all reality. All of these things, again, lots of Aishwarya, but it's all being confirmed here, right? Purijan Prabhu makes a very sweet point. Arjuna, up until this point, has been saying how immeasurable the Supreme Lord is, and now he's trying to measure it. And that's why we're hearing all of these words coming out, right? All of these big, grand concepts, he's dropping them. But we should know, this is not a comprehensive description of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because Arjuna has just spent this whole time saying, I cannot describe this. I cannot detail this to you. I cannot explain to you what this is. I cannot even put this into words. But here are a few words anyways. Again, this is a point we often make. Mayavadis will tell you that no words can capture the Supreme Brahman, right? You can understand the Supreme Brahman, you can realize it, but you will never be able to put it into words. We strongly disagree. We say you will never be able to understand the Supreme Brahman, right? But you can definitely begin to put it into words, but you will never have enough words to fully describe him. That is the difference. The Mayavadi says there are no words. Just be silent and stand on your hand and do a handstand for 10,000 years, and then maybe you will realize Brahman, right? There are no words that you can use to describe the Supreme Lord. We will say there are not enough words in all existence to describe the Supreme Lord. I always like to bring up the example of Ananta Shesh, with so many heads, right? All of them speaking, 1,000 heads speaking Hari Katha, right? Since before time began, and he hasn't finished the first word of describing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, okay? We cannot exhaust. So we should take this as an example. Just because the Lord is undescribable, just because the Lord is impossible to capture in words, doesn't mean we shouldn't use words to speak about the Supreme Lord. It just means we should never stop speaking about the Supreme Lord, right? This is a misapplication that you'll find impersonalists and Mayavadis often use. Yeah, okay. So let's keep on going then. I believe text 19 had a wonderful artistic depiction. Yes, a wonderful. Who did this? Anyways, if no one fesses up, well, it's still very nice. I think Mrugank Prabhu has decided to grace us with his transcendental association. So I think Mrugank Prabhu can say the English of the Sanskrit if he's willing to. Give you a sec. Well, don't worry, it'll take me a second to say the shloka. Anadi madhyantam ananta viryam ananta bahum shashishuryam netram pashyami tvam deepta hutasha vaktram swatejasa vishvam idam tapantam.
You are without origin, middle, or end. Your glory is unlimited. You have numberless arms, and the sun and moon are your eyes. I see you with blazing fire coming forth from your mouth and burning this entire universe by your own radiance.
So here we find just got yeah, Jai. So here we find a very sweet description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, I'm saying sweet a little bit sarcastically. This is almost a little bit scary, right? We're hearing about a mouth of blazing fire. You are burning this universe with your heat. At this point, we are beginning to hear about the Kala Rupa. The Kala Rupa is a form that that is, of course, part of the universal form. And this is the form of time itself. And what is time? Kalosmi lokakshayakrit pravriddha, right? Time I am, the great destroyer of worlds, right? This is very famous text, especially in the West. When we get to the text, we'll discuss why. But I'm sure some of you will have some familiarity with how it was quoted by Oppenheimer at the nuclear weapons testing. So, anyways, we're not there yet. So we're hearing again no beginning, no middle, no end, right? And this is also an interesting thing because we can say the same thing about Krishna, right? Krishna has no beginning, middle, or end, and yet he has a form. And this is something that's very confusing for people to grasp, right? Because form normally means there's a beginning, a middle, or an end, right? Like I have a form, right? And my hand has, a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end, right? And without the end, middle, and beginning, my hand wouldn't have form, right? So it's very confusing to think how Krishna, who also has no beginning, middle, or end, can have a form. Satyaraj Prabhu, he discusses this. On the one hand, Krishna is inconceivable, right? How can we begin to grasp him? And that is true, right? But Satyaraj Prabhu, he gives a very sweet analogy. And he talks about the flame of a fire, right? When you look at look at a match and you light a match, on the end of the match, there is a flame there, right? That flame has the same form as a bushfire, right? That form is the same, right? So in this way, we can see that a form can be larger and larger and larger and still have form. So he sort of speaks about it like that. We see Krishna's form, and it is and to us it seems limited because we're used to seeing small forms, and we see a matchstick, but we're actually seeing a bushfire. Those forms are the exact same way. Of course, again, this analogy falls apart because bushfires are not unlimited, right? But the point of this analogy is, again, to give us some understanding. We might remember earlier on in the Gita, Krishna himself gives an analogy to understand, to try and explain a chintya bheda bheda. And what does he say? This is not a perfect analogy. So if Krishna's analogy isn't perfect, then I don't really have much of a shot either. But it's just there to try to get us thinking about how form can go. Yeah. And I agree with Nitai Prabhu. I don't want to show any favoritism, but this is one of the better drawings. All of them are good in their own way, but there's some real artistic talent going on here. Whoever drew this and is contemplating a life of unemployment should become an artist. And not as a roast, just because no matter how good you are, you won't be. Mrunal Mataji, Jai. All glories to Mrunal Mataji's artistic talent. Okay, text 20. And again, I like where the 11th chapter is placed because the middle section of the Gita can be very philosophical, and the 11th chapter is very straightforward, right? I don't think any of us are really philosophically struggling with anything at this point. So it's a nice little breather before we then finish off the module. And then we'd start the Jnana section. Okay, maybe then, maybe then Mrunal Mataji, seeing as she gave us that very wonderful drawing, can say the English of text 20. Dhyava prithivyor idam antaram hi vyaptam tvayaktena dishascha sarvaha drishtva bhutam rupam ukram tavedam lokatrayam pravyathitam mahatmam. Mrunal Mataji, if you're able to do the English.
Sorry, Prabhuji. I don't know what's wrong with the cursor, but here. Although you're one, you spread throughout the sky, and the planets and all space between. O Great One, seeing this wondrous and terrible form, all the planetary systems are perturbed. Hare Krishna.
Jai, right? So here we find fear, right? We remember earlier that we weren't discussing the rasa of fear. Here the rasa of fear is coming out, right? And we're hearing again more of a description of the Kala Rupa, okay? The Kala Rupa, the form of time. And what is time doing, right? Spreading throughout all of the sky and planets and space. Who can escape time, right? No one can escape time. Time is this all-devouring beast, right, which consumes and destroys all things, and therefore all the three worlds have become terrified, right? Because who can escape it? Even again, as we discussed, the demigods, one day the mahapralaya will happen, and even the demigods will face death, right? Even Brahma himself at the end of this universe will have his body dissolved, and he will continue to undergo this cycle of birth and rebirth, right? What a great enemy is time, right? An enemy, of course, to our dreams of material success, right? Time is the great reminder that we are not the controller. Srila Prabhupada would say, why are we in this material world? It is because we want to be the controller. We want to be the Supreme Lord. We have envy of Krishna. We think, I want to control this world. I want to exploit the world. I don't want to be dancing with Krishna and forgetting myself and engaged in love. I want to be the center. I want to be the center of the dance, right? And then so with this sort of desire, we are in this material world. And time is the ultimate reminder that you are not the Lord, because ultimately everyone has to surrender to time. Srila Prabhupada would say, either you surrender to Krishna directly by dancing and chanting in kirtan, or you surrender to Krishna indirectly and he will come to you in the form of death. And in the form of death, you will have no choice about whether you have to surrender or not. And therefore, all the three worlds, they are terrified. Of course, we are not terrified, right? Srila Prabhupada gives the wonderful analogy of a cat, right? The jaws of a lion, when being used on its enemy, right, are used to kill the enemy, right? To kill the prey. The deer or whatever, I don't know if tigers hunt deer, whatever tigers hunt, right? The deer, right? It sees the jaws of the tiger and it is not feeling very excited. It's not feeling very happy, right? It's feeling a lot of fear. But you've all seen, right? Maybe some of you have cats. I'm a dog person, so I don't have cats. But you see how cats carry baby kittens, right? They use the same teeth and they carry them on the neck, right? They bite them on the neck and they carry them around. That's how cats will carry their kittens. Yes, thank you, Visakha Mataji, for the so cats, they will carry around the kittens with the mouth, right? And the kitten is not feeling, oh, this is the end of my life, you know, and now it's time to think of Krishna. It's the final moments to go back to Godhead. That's not what the kitten is thinking. That's what the deer is thinking, right? The deer is feeling that fear, right? It is the same mouth, and yet the child of the cat is feeling very sheltered by it. So there's a wonderful analogy Prabhupada gives. And the same we feel about death and time and all of these things. They put fear into all of the three worlds. But for the devotees, we just rejoice in it, right? Because this is another way that we can interact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So like this, we find that. We find that in the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, right? When death personified comes to see him at the end of his life. People often, they talk about Dhruva Maharaj's childhood pastimes. They don't discuss his adult pastimes too much. But at the end, he comes and he simply pays his respects, right? He has no real issue. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. We'll take our 5-minute break. We will discuss, like, I think there's just 2 or 3 more drawings, and then everyone can, yeah, we'll see. We have a higher turnout today than I expected, so we'll see. We'll all draw something at least today. Okay. Yep, but I'll see you all in 5 minutes. I'll see you at 11:05. Hare Krishna. So here is Rohan Prabhu's drawing of text 14. So now, yeah, this is Mrunal. He's giving you a run for your money. Okay. Not that. Okay, let's go back. Where were we up to? I think we just finished text 20. Okay, text 21. This is another one that didn't end up getting done, and once again I will recite the Sanskrit, and you can still see the slides because I'm opening up my notes. Okay, good. So, yeah, okay, let's go text 21. Amihi tvam sura sangha vishanti kechid bhita pranjalayo grinanti swasti yuktva maharshi siddha sanghaha stuvanti tvam stubhibhi pushkalabhihi. And maybe we can have Vidhi Mataji say the English for this one.
All the hosts of demigods are surrendering before you and entering into you. Some of them, very much afraid, are offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings crying all peace are praying to you by singing the Vedic hymns.
Enjoy. So this one's interesting. The demigods are a little bit afraid of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially so. We know this in Nrsingadev pastimes, right? Prahlad Maharaj has obviously been protected by Nrsingadev. A little just trying to see if you remember the little trivia I dropped on you. Who is the Ishtadev, the specific form that Prahlad Maharaj is a devotee of? Who can tell me?
Is it Krishna?
Krishna, yes. I'm not sure if you remember, I went off on that tangent and I sent you all those Bhagavatam texts to back that up. Seeing you, I wasn't mental speculating. Yes, I don't think anyone got it. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you mean there, Prabhu. Okay, so let's keep on going then. So Nrsingadev, right? My bad, it was a private. Well, I'm happy you're having a good private conversation there. Okay. So Nrsingadev, right? Nrsingadev, right? He appears, and of course he's roaring, and he's finished killing Hiranyakashipu, and all the demigods are happy because Hiranyakashipu was, you know, being a tyrant and really making the demigods' existence very difficult. So all the demigods were present there, right? But we might remember who came up to Nrsingadev, because after a while, Nrsingadev came and he was very angry. Who could mistreat my devotee, right? He kills Hiranyakashipu, defending Prahlad Maharaj. But Nrsingadev stays very angry, right? And all the demigods, they begin to continue to be worried. They think, oh, if he keeps staying angry like this, then, you know, we're all done for, right? And who gets sent forth? Who gets sent forth to calm down Nrsingadev? Who can tell me?
Is it Prahlad Maharaj?
Yes, it's Prahlad Maharaj. We all know, very sweet pastime, right? All of these demigods, powerful beings, they're too afraid. But the sweet little boy, he goes up and he appeases the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Very sweet. And there's a few reasons given by our acharyas why the demigods are scared in this moment. We know all the standard ones, and I'm not going to go through them because this isn't a Nrsinga Chaturdasi class. But one of them, which is given and which is relevant to this, is that when the demigods saw Hiranyakashipu getting killed, because all the demigods, in order to become a demigod, you have to go through all these karmic processes, right? You're still very involved in the karmic system. You've just really cultivated good karma, right? So all the demigods, they see this and they think, you know, Hiranyakashipu, he was demonic, but we all have a similar desire to be the lord of the world, right? That he does. Otherwise, we wouldn't be demigods, right? So they become a little bit afraid of Nrsingadev because they think partially we're also a little bit in that same sort of Hiranyakashipu mentality, right? Where we want to be the kings, we want to be the rulers. Again, why would we be demigods if it was any other way? So because of that, they feel a little bit of fear, right? And so the demigods, right? They are described as being very much in fear. And this is what Baladev Vidyabhushan, he backs up, right? He says that among the demigods, some of them are rather afraid and therefore they pray to the Lord like that. Some demigods are devotees and etc., etc. So I'm not saying that all demigods are like this, but many of them are afraid because they have that slight demonic tendency, right? In order to want to rule over the world, except they've expressed it in the mode of goodness. And therefore it becomes a Devic tendency. Okay. So I think, yeah, I think let's keep going. Or yeah, let's just keep going. Text 22 then, I think had also a nice drawing, if I remember correctly. Yes, I liked this one. I don't know, I just liked the flute. Okay. Text 22. And then we can have I asked Jaswant Prabhu already? Jaswant Prabhu can say the English.
Okay.
Rudraditya Vassavo ye chasadhya vishvesvino marutaschoshmapascha Gandharva yaksha sura siddha sangha vikshante tvam vismitaschaiva sarve.
All the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, the Adityas, the Vasus, and Sadhyas, the Vishwadevas, the two Ashvis, the Maruts, the forefathers, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Asuras, and the perfected demigods are beholding you in wonder.
Jai, Jai. So I'm not going to comment on that much because it's just a list, and of course we can discuss who all those personalities are, but we only have so much time in Bhakti-śāstrī. Interestingly enough, Baladev Vidyabhushan, he says that one of these groups are people who drink steam, and I don't know what he means by that, but haribol, right? I'm sure somebody can look into that. He says they refer to certain forefathers who drink steam as compared to drinking, I would assume, regular water. Maybe it's something to do with sacrifices to the forefathers. I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with those sort of rituals. I'm not, so yeah. But anyways, we'll just keep on going then. Thank you, Prabhu, for reading out. Now let's go text 23. And we can have I asked Sevamrita Mataji? Let's have Sevamrita Mataji read the English. Rupam mahatte bahuvaktra netram mahabaho bahurupadam bahudaram bahudamstra karalam drishtva loka pravyatathitastataham.
Almighty Armed One, all the planets with the demigods are disturbed at seeing your great form, with its many faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth. And as they're disturbed, so am I.
Jai. So we see here, now Arjuna is really starting to almost shift into fear, right? He's feeling disturbed. He's not very comfortable, right? Because this is a very ferocious, terrific form, right? So earlier, as I was saying, people will say that that he was in fear at the beginning. No, it's really when he's witnessing the Kala Rupa, right? This form of time consuming all things, that he begins to become afraid. Again, we can feel there's been a real contrast in tone, right? Earlier, we're hearing all of this beautiful stuff about suns and, radiance and everything. And now what are we hearing, right? Fearful with many teeth, many stomachs, right? Of course, stomachs have that association of like digestion, right? He's consuming everything, right? All of that, right? And this world is filled with terror.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Does that mean when Krishna is showing the form to Arjuna, that the other demigods, they are also seeing the form? And like they're seeing Krishna manifested into that form?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I think that the demigods always see this form, is my understanding. That's the commentary that's given by some acharyas. That again, remember we said divya chakshush, right? Yep. He's being given can't actually remember if it says chakshush, but it definitely says divya, the transcendental eyesight that's given, right? And they say this couldn't be transcendental in a spiritual sense because Arjuna's already witnessing the supreme personality of Godhead in his beautiful two-armed form. So therefore, in this context, divya means pertaining to the demigods. So the demigods would be regularly maybe witnessing it slightly different, but somehow they would be witnessing it in this sort of way. So the demigods anyways, I think, have some sort of interaction with it. Whether they see it exactly the same way, off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But what I would say is that he's being given special eyes. So this would be something that even for the other people in the battlefield, I doubt they were seeing it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's keep on going. Text 24. Text 24. I think we're getting towards the end of the drawings. Oh, I forgot to show. Yeah, I forgot to show this wonderful drawing. So yeah, we're seeing here the terror. I like this one because it has the teeth, and that's what I want to emphasize. Arjuna is describing now a very scary, intimidating form of the Supreme Lord. Okay, yeah, so that's what I thought. That was all the drawings that we had. So we will begin our next activity and we'll allocate drawings, and you can all draw the remaining shlokas. Let me stop the share. Again, as I said, after we did the very philosophical past few chapters, 11th chapter is an opportunity to use, the other parts of our brain and maybe take a bit of a relaxed approach. Okay, so I'm just thinking though. So we've got text 24. We've got text 24 to 30, right? Plus, let me count now. I just have to recount because Rohan Prabhu sent his. So 24 plus 30 and 17 and 18. So 24 to 30 is 6. So we've got 8 texts, but we have 17 people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in pairs and you can work together with brainstorming, and then one of you can draw it. Is that all right? So what I'll do though is I'll make the breakout rooms now of each one of your pairs, and then I'll come into each one of your rooms and tell you which shloka number you have. Is that all good? Yeah. Okay. Enter into our rooms. Yes. I'm also going to pause the recording for everyone who's decided to skip this lesson, so that everyone can have the fear of God put in them when they're watching this recording later on. Next module, I'm going to make it mandatory to have your videos on. There will be this module. I encouraged it, but I realized that encouragement is not enough. I have to bring down the hammer of people might not want to be recorded. That is a good point. Mrugank Prabhu well, yeah. We'll have to discuss that out, but I do want to make videos mandatory to some extent. We can knuckle that out.
Yes, Rosie, it's made a mandatory for the Melbourne Education Committee.
Yeah.
So,
it was also mandatory for my Mayapur Institute one. But what I might do is I might make the recordings unlisted. I might make them, because right now on YouTube, they're listed on the YouTube channel. I might unlist the video. I'll see how everyone feels about that. We can have a further discussion another week. But I was thinking of just unlisting the videos, so then only you guys will have access to the videos. And if everyone feels more comfortable with that, then, because I would rather, those videos be unlisted and no one can see them and everyone have their videos on, because yeah, it's not like anyone outside of this group is watching those videos anyways, right? So if everyone feels comfortable with that, I might do that, but I'll send a WhatsApp message so everyone can consent to it. Yeah. Okay. Also, Mrugank Prabhu, is that your drawing?
Yes, mine and Alex's.
Yeah. Could you send it into the WhatsApp group?
Yep.
Just so I can collate everything
I
accordingly.
did. I'll tag it.
Okay. Jai. And please, when you send them with the shloka number, because don't get me wrong, all of your artworks are very nice, but sometimes I'm not exactly sure which shloka you've been drawing. Yeah. Okay then. Now we've done that. I guess with the remaining 10 minutes or so. Also, I just wanted to say, we mentioned this earlier at the beginning of the class, but I just want to say it again now that more people are here. We will not have a class on Janmashtami weekend. So after Prabhupada Vyas Puja, you can all sleep in, collect all those hours that you've lost back, etc., etc. I'll be doing the same thing. If anyone watches Mayapur TV, Mangalarti is definitely going to be empty that day. It'll be one lone brahmachari who's drawn the short stick and was not allowed to sleep in. So that's what'll happen. So yeah, no one. We won't have a class that week. So there was a few questions that came up about the closed book test. I'm just saying this housekeeping stuff because I'll forget if I do it at the end. People asking about the closed book test. So for those of you who joined us from module 2, the closed book test, it's listed in the handbook, all of the questions you'll be asked. I won't ask you a question that's not listed in those potential questions, right? So it's you're relatively safe in that way. I'm not going to pull any wild cards out there. I really would rather do it in person this time around. That's why I'm hoping that we will finish the module a bit after Janmashtami, so it won't be a burden on temple management for me to ask to do it in person. For those of you in Melbourne, Brisbane, so on and so forth, right? I will try to speak to your local authorities, or I'm happy to run it online for the devotees in Melbourne and Brisbane, but do it at least in person for the devotees in Sydney. The closed book test at the earliest will be in 4 weeks, I think. Maybe 5 weeks. but definitely at the earliest 4 weeks, because we're missing the Janmashtami session. And I was thinking, it was an idea that was proposed to me. I think it's a good idea, is that I'll record classes when we miss a session. I'll record classes that you guys can watch in lieu of having the live class, but I'm not going to do that for Janmashtami, just because I just feel like all the devotees are going to be really exhausted from that time. So everyone just rest up during that time. So yeah, so 4 to 5 weeks, we'll have the closed book test. I'm really going to try to push to have it in person. I'm going to see how well that pushing is received. But yeah, just thought I had a few people asking that, so I thought if it's a recurring enough thing, I'd wanted to get it in the recorded section of the class, and when we're all present. Okay, so discussing that, I'll go back to sharing my screen. I'm very excited to look at all of your artworks after we end the class today. Just quickly, are there any further questions with any of those assessments? With with anything on the housekeeping side of things?
The closed book exam will be similar to the first module, probably.
It'll be similar to the first one. I'm thinking of making this one a little bit harder. I felt like the first one was easy. And I made it easy because everyone was nervous, everyone was stressing, thinking, you know. But I'm sure everyone found the closed book test relatively easy, right? No, I don't think anyone really had an existential crisis that maybe they should drop out of Bhakti-śāstrī from it. That was the shloka test that gave everyone the existential crisis. But no, yeah. So closed book test will be a little bit harder than the first one, but the same format. So I'll just have those list of questions. I'll give you however many marks they're worth on the side, and then you'll write it out. I'm just thinking of doing a little bit of the harder questions and maybe a few more questions is all. But honestly, the first one was so easy, I think the second one will be easy as well, even though it'll be a tiny bit harder.
What about shloka recitation?
Yes, so shloka recitation test, I'm going to do the same thing. So we won't have a class that week, but I will try to do the shloka test during that week, right? So after the closed book test, we have the 1 week break, and during that 1 week break, I'll do the shloka test. Okay, that's the goal.
I'm sorry if I've missed out. We are still awaiting your assessment from the open book test of the previous.
Yeah. I'm very sorry about that.
I thought maybe I've missed it.
No. I said a few weeks ago because I just had all those health problems back to back. So I've been very behind on a lot of things. So yeah, but I will be getting those back to you shortly, within a fortnight, I think. Hopefully. With Krishna's mercy, if I don't get sick again. Yeah. Any other housekeeping questions? Okay. Any questions about? No. Yeah. Any questions about what we've just done? No. Okay. We'll just talk about we'll just talk a tiny bit. Well, I guess we'll just go into the next few shlokas and we'll talk a little bit about them, and then we'll wrap up. We really only have time for 1 or 2 more tops. Share screen. Okay, so text 24. Who did the drawing for text 24?
Me and Mrugank.
Jai. So I'm very excited. We'll actually, I'll stop my share and I'll throw that image up right now. 11.24. And here we go. Okay. Oh, Jai, a very nectarian photo. You will see it in a second. Centered. Okay, so here we have it. And seeing as it was Mrugank Prabhu and Alex Prabhu, let us have, I'm just trying to think who. Let's have, who haven't I asked today? I don't think I've asked Uma Devi.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I haven't asked you for in English. So I'll recite the Sanskrit and you can say the English. Nabhasprisham ditam maneka varanam vyattat Vyaktanam dipta vishala netram drishtva hitvam pravyathitantar atma dhritimna vindami shamam cha Vishnu.
Translation: O all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you with your many radiant colors, touching the sky, your gaping mouths, and your great glowing eyes, my mind is perturbed by fear. I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai. So here we're finding that full confirmation. As I said, Arjuna originally, he's just thinking, wow, how amazing is this form? But we really see a shift in tone, and I do want us to really note that shift in tone. At one point, it goes from being opulent and amazing and impressive, and it becomes very, very scary and horrific. And when that scary and horrific form is described, this is the Kala Rupa. This is the form of time. Time which destroys all things. Everything is destroyed by time. And Arjuna progressively is feeling more and more aghast. We might remember from the previous text that Arjuna says, everyone is seeing you with terror, as am I, right? Everyone is seeing you so fearfully, as am I. And now Arjuna, he is completely doubling down on this, and he is saying this. I want to make a quick point before we finish today, and as we continue to discuss with time, because sometimes devotees will hear these descriptions of time, right? They'll hear these descriptions of the way that time consumes all things and how it destroys everything, right? And they'll think, well, therefore, there is no time in the spiritual world, right? They'll think that therefore the spiritual world is timeless. But actually, the spiritual world does have time, but it has spiritual time. It has time that works in a different way, right? The nature of time in this world is what? What have we seen in all of these descriptions? What have we seen time embodied as being? What is it? This Kala Rupa is what? Is it gentle? Is it kind? Is it soft?
Destroyer?
Death.
Yes, death, destroyer, death, disease, destruction, horror, all of these sort of things, right? All of these sort of things have been described because that is the nature. Time in this world deconstructs, it destroys, and it consumes. But time in the spiritual world is the opposite. Time in the spiritual world creates. Time in the spiritual world is eternal. Time in the spiritual world does not destroy moments. Time in the spiritual world does not consume moments, right? Time does not take a moment and do away with it, but it eternally allows it to exist. And therefore, we know that Krishna's pastimes are all eternal. When Krishna is in the spiritual world, all his pastimes are happening at once. Why is this? Because time in the spiritual world is not like time in the material world. Time in the spiritual world creates and sustains. It does not destroy and decay. This is the opposite nature. So we can think, what is the nature of time in this world? We are all experiencing this moment right now, and this moment fades away, and we will never experiencing it again because time has consumed it. Time is eating and destroying each moment that we live. But in the spiritual world, it's the opposite. Every single moment is being sustained and built and constantly growing and expanding. Krishna's pastimes are eternal. They're all happening at once in a very inconceivable way. Such is the nature of time. So I want to make this point as we describe all of these horrific and intense descriptions of time. It is not the time, this is material time. This is the nature of time on this world, right? But it is not the nature of time in the transcendental world. And therefore, we find these descriptions very wonderfully, right? Okay, it's 11:59. I was thinking of doing 2 texts, but I think we'll just go over them. We'll stop smack dab on time today, which I'm always very happy to do. Are there any questions before we wrap up today? I wasn't expecting any questions, but because, yeah, this is all very straightforward. I don't think anyone gets too confused in the 11th chapter. Okay, Hare Krishna. I'll see you all next week. The homework for next week is to read chapter 12 up to text. I'll send you a short amount of homework because it's Janmashtami time and because we're getting closer to your closed book test. You'll all be scared of that. Read from chapter 12 up to text 7. Okay. That's the homework for next week. Okay, I will see you all then. And yeah, wait a second, next week. And then the week after is Janmashtami weekend, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'll see you all next week. Have fun. Have fun in the holiday season, and I'll see you all then. Let me know if you have any questions on the WhatsApp group. Okay, Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Srimad Bhagavad-gītā ki jai. Okay, Hare Krishna. See you all then.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much.